Okay, small technical hitch, just waiting for Facebook to load. Okay. Hopefully I'm on. Alex, can you wave to me on Facebook and we'll just check this is all working? Hooray! Okay. Sorry about small delay there, a little technical problem, but we're all sorted. So my name's Elaine Faulkner and I work as a production manager and I'm based down in Exeter in Devon. I haven't used two platforms before, so I'll try and remember to look at you both. Hopefully that'll be all right. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about working with the production manager and what production manager does. So firstly, just to say thanks to the King's Head Theatre for hosting these sessions and getting everything organised. I have to confess that being down in Exeter, I haven't actually been physically to the King's Head Theatre, which might sound a bit weird, but London's quite a long way away. But the connection here is through Alex Jackson, who's recently done their Associate Director programme, and we've worked together down in Devon quite a bit. Probably the biggest thing and most recently was on the Exeter Fringe Festival last year. Okay, so I'll just start and give you a little bit of an introduction to what I do, my career in a bit of a nutshell, and then I'll talk a bit more broadly about the role of the production manager. Each little bit I talk about could probably have a whole session on, so please do ask questions. If there's particular things you'd like to know a bit more about, then shout. So I started out very much with a stage management background. That's what I trained in, and I've been working in the industry since professionally for about 16 odd years now. So I trained in Bristol at the Old Vic Theatre School and then went on to work in stage management roles. At the start, I was mainly working as deputy stage manager and doing lots of touring, did that for about 4 or 5 years, and that was kind of large scale plays in a more commercial level. And then sort of reached a bit of a point where I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I made a bit of a conscious decision to look out for some different sorts of work and ended up working in some smaller scale jobs and doing my first few bits of children's theatre, which I really enjoyed doing. Ended up doing some freelance work for Theatre Alibi, which was a really happy accident that they are based in Exeter, and I'm local to the area anyway. And that started as freelance kind of stage managing. Every year they do a tour into Devon primary schools and another show or project. So that was a real mixture of schools work, village halls, small scale studios, mid-scale theatres, lots of original work and devising. And that evolved from being a freelance stage manager on a small show, and I ended up becoming resident with them and being their production manager. So that's really where I cut my teeth, production managing. Was with them, if you count from the very first job, we were getting on not far off 10 years when I eventually decided to leave and find some new challenges, and then worked for a couple of years freelance. And again, that was masses of variation of worked outdoors, worked at different scales, done some fringe scale work, did some work more venue based, and then ended up last year becoming the resident production manager at the Northcote Theatre in Exeter. So that's a mid-scale venue that runs as a charity and predominantly as a receiving house for touring shows, but also produces at least a couple times a year. So doing panto and at least one other project. So my first shows production managing for them were we did Beauty and the Beast at Christmas, and then we've just done Bang Bang, which has then gone off on a national tour. So loads of different scales and types of work in my career so far. I should also say that's even stretched into more of an event side of things. Um, the WOW Festival, which the South Bank Centre initiated and have been doing for 10 years now, actually, they got to roll that out to some other cities as part of the Spirit 2012 project. And so we had 2017 and 18 in Exeter, we got to put on a WOW Festival as well. So I was the production manager there, part of a small team of 4 or 5 local people working sort of under the umbrella of the South Bank to put those on in Exeter, and that was amazing and huge and unlike any other job I'd ever done. So I really like that aspect of the work, the variation, and the fact that each job is very different. And I think now's probably the moment to say a bit different to some other roles in theatre. There's no real set career route or training process for becoming a production manager. I know in recent years there are some courses that have popped up at universities and theatre schools, but people get to the role in different routes. So I've very much come stage management way, but people also can get to be production managers through a more technical side of things. So they might be a venue technician, and then they maybe do a bit of touring as a production electrician, maybe do some lighting design, and then sort of eventually, usually always is a bit of a happy accident for most of us, end up production managing too. So I'm just trying to check if we've got any questions or comments so far. No, I think we're good. So the role of a production manager, I think there are some real basic headlines that anytime you take on the role of production manager, you're going to be looking at. But each job, there's going to be a different emphasis on different parts of that role. So if you think of it, I don't know, like a pie chart, and each section of your pie chart, you're going to have a section named the same thing for every job you do, but just the proportion is really going to change. So, for example, my role at the moment, managing the tech team at the Northcote, I've got a team of 4 permanent staff plus a pool of casual staff, and I line manage all of them. So my bit of my pie chart for the Northcote job of people management is quite large. Whereas if you go back to when I was working with the lovely Katie Villa, Exeter-based maker, on her Wild show, which was kind of very sort of fringe, small-scale, one-woman show, well, that bit of people management was really tiny because it was mostly me and Katie and a couple other creatives dipping in and out to help the process. So although I've got an eye on that people management section, it's really changed from those 2 jobs. So I'd say the main areas that you're thinking about is production budget. So when you first start a role with talking to the producer, whether that's an independent producer or whether that is building-based management, you'll get given a budget and you'll have a discussion about what exactly that's supposed to cover and how tight that budget is, whether there's room for manoeuvre if things come up, or whether actually, no, that really is every penny somebody has. And the best times are when you're given an overall, when it works the best, should I say, is when you're given an overall budget that you then as production manager are allowed to manage and can break it down into the different areas, because that flexibility is really useful, and is usually something production managers are really good at doing, is judging where to kind of divide it up between things like set and lighting and holding a little bit back for that unexpected request that comes in later or the problem that's occurred. Another big section is always going to be health and safety, right from the beginning, and that's something you're thinking about, whatever the job. If you're making a new show and that involves a set design process, then you're going to be needing to look at that set right from the very beginning. And who's making it even? Are there risks involved in getting it made? And then what about when it's up and running and actors are using it? How's it touring? But also in a venue point of view, maybe I'm looking less specifically at the sets because people are bringing them to us and they're already established. But within a venue, then there's loads of different aspects. You've got to think about what your crew are working on. They're working at height, they're working with noise, all of those sorts of things too. So the health and safety, exactly what's contained in that topic will be different per job. But it's a very big element of any production management role. You're also going to be looking at production schedule, and the producer from the very beginning will have an overview of when rehearsals are and when shows are, and maybe some other key things have already been booked in. Maybe they've already booked in the production photographer or things like that. But another thing that production managers are really good at doing, and really let them do it, is to manage the detail of that schedule. The closer you get to production week, and actually production week itself, the more complex it becomes. And if the production manager's really got hold of that, it can really make a massive difference to helping all of that go well. The running of Tech Week, I always think, is like the peak of the production manager's job. It's the thing you're really building up to, and it's so important to the show. And I really personally enjoy it. It's full on, it's hard work, but it's exciting as well, seeing all the elements come together. You're also going to be thinking about, I mentioned set a little bit before. That include, depending on the scale, that could be really tiny, a few cardboard boxes and some props, or if you're at mid-scale, it could be huge. You could be looking at massive structures and big crews, and needing to have elements flown. Lighting is a part of pretty much every show, unless you've decided to do one in the dark, which I have seen. Sound, again, that can really vary vastly on a scale from a few effects played back through a simple PA to tens of radio mics, and AV may or may not be part of your production. So that's just a little taste of the different areas that the production manager is juggling along the way. It's really it is a jack of all trades type of role. You need a good base level of skills and knowledge across all of those areas you're going to encounter, but you don't necessarily have to be an expert in all of them. The one really big essential one is you need to be able to problem solve creatively, hopefully. And got a question in. Alex has said, as a production manager, who are your key collaborators on the creative team and how do you work with them? Key collaborators, well, I mean, you're working with pretty much everyone that's involved in the show. Key people are the producer right from the beginning. Ideally, you've got a really good relationship with them. Clear communication is really essential, and from a producer's point of view, the more you can be clear about your expectations from the start, the better, and get that dialogue going. The director is a really close collaborator. They obviously are going to be inputting to all elements of the show. and might be having requests for you, but also they're the person to go to if you encounter a problem or a sticking point. It can be surprising actually that, you know, something that was on the original wish list for a show, there's a big problem with it, and you go and talk to your director and explain the problem, and that might go, oh, that's easy. Actually, don't worry about that. We can fix that in the rehearsal room. Or, you know, something's a bit touch and go budget wise, and then you go and talk to them and find out that no, that's a really key element, then you know that that's got to be a bit higher on the priority list than maybe you thought it was. So keeping that conversation going is really important. And then of course, you know, you're in talks with the designers on and off throughout the process. I mean, depending on quite what the project is, if there's a set designer and you've got a design process, and you'll work really closely with them throughout the design process. The same for lighting, sound, AV, whatever the various elements are. As you get a bit closer to rehearsals and production week, there might be others as part of that that production, such composers, choreographers, and then that's where production meetings become invaluable in getting some people in the room together and going through where everybody's at with their different areas. Okay, another one. Do you often work on multiple projects simultaneously? What are the challenges of this as a production manager? Yes, I do definitely work on multiple projects. If you're freelancing, then absolutely things are overlapping, because quite often you won't start being full-time as a project. So you might just have a few initial meetings, design meeting, maybe an early production meeting, sort of organised and booked in for one show. So I think the challenges are, I mean, obviously time management. As things get busy, and you know, sometimes you'll end up with things backing up to each other or just overlapping slightly a bit more than you would like ideally. So you have got to focus and sort of block out your time during your day. I think the thing to remember to do is to communicate that with the people you're working with. There is a fine line between still having the people you're working with feel like they're important to you and that you are prioritizing them and doing a good job for them, but also if, you know, if they've only hired you and you've agreed for a certain amount of prep time that is a few days, or, you know, some kind of limited time, then they also do just need to understand that that really is the time that's been booked out. But it's usually, that's just expectations. And I'd say on the flip side of that, if you're a producer or director looking to work with a production manager, then setting that up at the start and having a conversation right at the beginning about expectations of availability and access to the production manager is really useful. Okay, oh, I might have missed one. What obstacles are most common in production management? I mean, I don't know whether that's obstacles to getting into it or while you're doing the job. I mean, production management is almost constant problem solving anyway. Like if somebody's having something go wrong or doesn't know where to turn, how to fix something, or what to do about a certain thing, then you're the person they come to. You won't always have the exact answer, but what's important is that you look at the problem really calmly and logically and help them work out how to fix it. Something I was going to say a bit about, if you're looking to hire or work with a production manager, getting them involved early on is really, really valuable. It's particularly if you're looking to tour, because it might feel like an additional expense, but even if it's only a handful of days, then I think it is well worth it just to have their eye and their thoughts on venues that you might be looking to go to. Because I'd say that is one obstacle that you can absolutely be presented with further down the line, is if a venue's been booked that doesn't suit the show at all. You know, if meetings with a set designer have already happened and the set's being built already, and then a venue's come in, it's an exciting, lovely venue later on, and you know, it looks great. Maybe the size of the stage is not a problem at all, but maybe what a producer hasn't noticed is that the door for the get-in is tiny and that big bit of set's just not going to fit. Whereas actually that's something that if you'd managed to have had a day or so with a production manager to look over the venues you were looking at, or to write you that little initial tech paragraph, not the tech spec, that can come way later, but just a little overview of your basic requirements, would be really valuable just to avoid scenarios like that. Any more questions? I don't think so. Okay. The other thing I was going to say, because I figure there might be quite a few of you on this video that are early career and doing kind of smaller fringe scale work, because there's no set way for production managers to get their experience in their career path. What I've realised is I've got a bit more experience and I've had more of a hand in hiring other people into various roles, crew roles or stage management roles. That at that level, if you're producing a fringe show, that you're just going to be looking at the role of production manager and then looking at experienced production managers you might have been put in touch with and wondering how on earth you're going to afford somebody, or they're never going to want to work with me. Those kind of thoughts. Is don't forget and have a look out for those kind of superstar stage managers, because chances are if you've got some of those jobs to be fulfilled on production management, they might just not have ever thought of themselves as being a production manager, and so that might just be worth having a chat with them and maybe encouraging them. Maybe they can take on a bit more, maybe they'd like that credit as a production manager too. Just, I think there's people out there who could be doing it, particularly at that smaller scale, who just haven't considered it. They've just gone, I've not done that before, I haven't got any training. So that's something to think about. Okay, I've got another question. Do you oversee health and safety on a show? Does this process differ if you work freelance or in-house? So yeah, health and safety is a massive part of the job. Quite often the ultimate responsibility is sitting higher up with a board or a director or producer, but on the ground you are the person responsible for managing it and for predicting what you might need and what might go wrong and making sure everybody is working safely. It is a little bit different whether you're working freelance or in-house. So in my role at the Northcote, vast majority of shows are touring in. So in theory, they've had some kind of stage management, production management who have thought about the whole tour and how their set's going to be built, how their lighting's going to be rigged, how their show runs, what happens in the show, if there's anything, fight scenes or special effects that need to be considered. So we always request they send a risk assessment over. I have to say they vary greatly in quality. So where my role is, it's casting an eye over that and looking out for any problems that might cause our staff or audience an issue. But we've also got a massive setting at the Northcote. If you think about all the different elements of a building, a theatre building, where the crew are going to be engaging. So they're going to be rigging, they're using the flying system, they're directing the vehicles, they're unloading, they're loading, they're handling set pieces and things they might be unfamiliar with. So there's loads of different things there to have a think about. So probably the process isn't too different, because the process is sitting down as early on as you can and having a think through. It's just basically all the things that might go wrong, which not the cheeriest of jobs, but then actually your job then is to think it through and go, all right, this thing might go wrong, but how can I best stop it and prevent it? So I think, yeah, without us going into a whole lecture on writing a risk assessment, I think that probably answers that one. Alex has dropped in with, if you're self-producing and you can't afford a production manager, do you have any top tips on what to focus your attention on? That's a good one. How should we answer that one? I think having a think at the start about your technical side of things and giving yourself a little overview. So which you're probably having to do creatively too, so I think it'll overlap. So think about things like size of performance space, which you're probably thinking about creatively and how you want to stage the show, but just have a think about that practically and what's set and any other kind of special effects you might want. If you're not going to have any tech support that you're able to bring in yourself, talk to the venues, whether you're just going to one or whether you've got a tour that you're booking, particularly your first venue, and be honest about that, and they can probably help you out quite a bit. I think budgeting is really important with or without a production manager, and I think that's just the real basics of that, of just having a look at what you can reasonably sensibly spend on all your different areas, but then particularly in tech, and just breaking it down into those different areas I've already talked about. You know, what you're doing with set. Are you having a set? You need money on that? And just think, really brainstorm all the different areas that you might have costs involved with. It's really easy to go, right, I'm going to buy these 2 chairs from IKEA. I'm going to ask my neighbour to build these 3 wooden boxes, and that's going to cost me X amount. But don't forget, how are they getting to rehearsals? How are they getting to the theatre? Is there a cost in transport there? Those 3 boxes that your neighbour's building, do you need to paint them? There's little things like that. So really give yourself some time to think it through. It might not be the most exciting task you ever do, but it will be really worth it. I'd say those are probably the 2 places to really start on that. All right, we're getting close to the end. Any last questions from anybody? Somebody's just commented, delegation is an art form. Absolutely. Vital in the production manager role. It's really worth remembering that sometimes you have to make sure everything's done, but you don't have to do everything. Okay, we might almost there. So thank you so much for joining us. Sorry about the little delayed start at the beginning. Hopefully there's been some little useful insights there. Yeah, could really easily go off on one about any of those different areas. don't forget the King's Head Theatre Online is happening every day. All the past videos are on their blog page, so you can check those out. Do have a look. There's various things popping up on the couple of companies I've already mentioned. So Northcote Theatre have got some stuff online. Theatre Alibi, especially if you've got kids to entertain, they've put a couple of their past shows online for you to view for free, and there's a creative task every week. There's been mythical creature drawing and puppet making already, so if you need some ideas and occupy any little ones, head over there. And also, I mean, as are many tech teams up and down the country, myself and the Northcote team are currently furloughed because the theatre is obviously closed. If anyone has any more detailed questions, I'm really happy to do like a little one-to-one chat if that would be useful for anybody. So just King's Head, get in touch with King's Head and they will put you in touch. All right, I'm going to get thanks to the King's Head and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.